Thoughts that were extraneous to your reflections would indeed be distracting. But contemplative prayer is not on the level of thinking. Emotionally charged thoughts are the chief way that the unconscious has of expelling chunks of emotional junk. In this way, without your perceiving it, a great many emotional conflicts that are hidden in your unconscious and affecting your decisions more than you realize are being resolved. As a consequence, over a period of time, you will feel a greater sense of well-being and inner freedom. The very thoughts that you lament while in prayer or meditation are freeing the psyche from the damage that has accumulated in your nervous system over a lifetime. That's just so powerful to me. One last part. So he's talking about the spiritual journey again. Your experience will seem to recycle, and you'll feel that you are back to where you started and haven't made any progress at all. Recycling is like climbing a spiral staircase. You seem to be returning to the point from which you started, but in actual fact, you are at a higher level. An eagle rising towards the sun keeps returning to the same place on the horizon, on the horizontal plane, but to a higher place on the vertical plane. I love that. An eagle rising toward the sun keeps returning to the same place on the horizontal plane, but to a higher place on the vertical plane. The inflowing of the divine light into our souls is a ray of darkness, according to John of the Cross. We see light in a dark room because of the dust that is there. If there were no dust, the ray of light would go right through the room without being observed. I could go on. Yes, the book is called Open Mind, Open Heart. Sorry, I don't want to just like dump all of that on you because it's a lot to take in, and each sentence is kind of meditation and a contemplation, but I just wanted to read that because those words coming from someone who has spent literally his entire life, over 70 years, in a deep spiritual life of prayer and meditation, sharing about that, and I've heard him speak about that, really has helped me so much. And I've heard other teachers talk about that. And I just think it's really good to have a conversation about and to really look at it. Like, what is happening? You know, if we're really doing these practices, whatever they may be, whether it's chanting or yoga or meditation or prayer, does it mean that as soon as we do that, it's like an open sea and everything is just going to be easy? Or does it mean that as we turn inward, like, you know, we're going to meet these things sometimes. We're going to meet unimaginable beauty and freedom and love like we've never known before. And we might meet places that are really defended and closed down and hurt that need that love. But that's what's supposed to happen. If you read the stories of any of the mystics, you know, that like they share, you know, oftentimes so openly and beautifully that process of purification, you could call it, that these different dark nights of the soul that happen. And they may not look like what I'm describing, like going on a retreat. That's just a very specific example I'm using, but it could be a period of our life where we're just meeting pain within ourselves and it feels like I keep going backwards. I'm never moving forwards. I just keep falling back and now I'm regressing. Or it could be we're working through grief or some kind of life change, right? I'm having that feeling like I'm doing it wrong. Nothing I'm doing is working. So I want to just name that, really, because we're not doing anything wrong. And nobody has the be all end all answer about how anybody's path is supposed to be. We can only learn, I think, from the great beings who share their wisdom with us, and to see and understand that, you know, doing these practices, they're beautiful and they also can create that inner churning. So that's why I think the most important thing on any journey that we're on is to meet everything with compassion and love and understanding. And that's why being in the presence of a great soul like Thich Nhat Hanh, for example, like his gentleness and his tenderness and his ability to meet everything with that kind of love and mindfulness and attention is so healing. You know, that's why it's that calligraphy of his says, true love heals. It does heal. It heals that's what allows all of these things to come up and to be healed and to be felt and released and then reintegrated so that we become, more whole. Not so that we all of a sudden become like this perfect image, of ourself. I have this spiritual ideal, and many people have this feeling. I know I do. I've struggled with that over the years, that feeling of, I talked about it before, I think in a live session, just that there's often this gap, right, between the person we are and the person we want to be. We have this sense of this spiritual ideal. This is what it would look like if I'm this perfect spiritual person, whatever that is. And until I get to that place, then I'm just, that's not happening, right? Then we're just projecting all of our low self-worth and our painful feelings about ourselves onto our spiritual journey. And then it's just all getting, kind of confused. Whereas if we could actually recognize that there really is no gap, and if we wait to love ourselves until we attain some idealized self, then we might always be waiting. It's like Amma says, like waiting to go swimming in the ocean until there's no waves, then no one will ever go, I mean, waves just keep coming, maybe they calm down, but they still, they're going to come. So loving ourselves and learning how to really just be with what we are and who we are now, I think is one of the most important things in the world. And of course, that itself is a practice. And I think having conversations like this is one thing among many that can be helpful. If we can just normalize it and acknowledge that this is true. Maybe there's some people out there who every time they do, their meditation, feel deep peace inside. That is possible. There's all kinds of different people in this world living different kinds of lives. But I don't really think it's possible for those of us whose mind and consciousness is constantly externalized. I don't think it's realistic to think that all of a sudden we turn that lens inward and we just, see like blank calmness, right? There's so much going on here all the time, and our lives are spent in distraction. So that's one reason why I actually really like music and chanting, because it provides like a refuge or a vehicle to just offer all of that into. You don't need to actually follow any storyline. I mean, of course, that happens sometimes, but sometimes, like what Father Keating was saying, sometimes doing practice, it's like these emotions will just come and they don't even necessarily have an association. It's just something arises. It could be anger, it could be fear, it could be sadness, and who knows where it's coming from or what it's about, who knows how old it is. But in chanting, right, or in music or in other types of, practices, it's not necessary to like analyze it and figure it out. We just need to let that, offer that, and just put that in the chant, in the music, and like give it to the universe, so to speak. And my experience has always been that when I offer that, pain or that dirt in my heart, right, to the universe, that it always comes back as flowers. That's definitely what I've found, that just to be honest and to feel whatever it needs to be felt, then it just moves through. And then there is a parting of the clouds. There is an opening, there is a softening and a quieting down. And then that space just gets more and more, right, over time. It's like a metaphor that has helped me is of a net. If you think of like a fishing net, usually our mind is like a very tight knit net. And so everything gets caught in it. Big whales and sorry to the whales, but big fish and little fish, everything gets caught when those spaces in the net are very tightly woven together. But when we do practice more, or when we even have these kinds of conversations or soften those defenses around our heart, then the spaces in the weaving of the net get bigger and more things can pass through. So maybe certain things that you might have had a reaction to or that might have upset you before, maybe they just go through and only certain things get caught. I love that image of just creating space in our being, for things to just flow through more easily. And that space is like a healing force. That space is the light of awareness. And that light of awareness is what does the transformation. Actually, if you think about it, in meditation, we're not doing anything. We're just observing. And yet, just sitting there and being present and looking and observing changes our brain. I'm sure you've read about all of the different studies, that Richie Davidson at the University of Wisconsin and so many different people are doing, neuroscientists, looking at the effects of meditation on the brain. It's not because we made a to-do list and we went out to conquer all of these things inside of us, right? It's sitting and being and allowing and just having that awareness. That itself is the transformer. Awareness is the transformer. And that's so beautiful because there is a gentleness to it. It's easy to get into that mindset, like, what am I going to do? How am I going to fix myself? How am I going to change this? How am I going to, heal this? What do I have to do? I have to do something. But it's actually in some way in the non-doing. It's just in the being and the looking at what's happening and feeling and letting it be, creating that space. Then the knot unties itself, when you have that space. We don't have to untie the knot, it just unties itself. Is any of this resonating? I feel like I'm just going off about all this stuff, but this is just my experience that I've had. Okay, I'm glad. I just really wanted to have a conversation about this. Thank you. Oh, thank you. So glad you're with me. I think I don't know, I think too much. That's probably why life gave me music, because they were like, this poor chick, she thinks too much. She needs to sing and just forget everything. I think I'm going to sing a song. What I like to do is I actually promised somebody that I would sing the Three Jewels chant that I sang last week. And I think that's a good chant to sing right now because it's a chant of refuge, taking refuge in the Buddha, refuge in the Dharma, refuge in the Sangha, which you don't have to be a Buddhist to resonate with that. It's the idea of taking refuge in the teacher or the one who is bringing us these teachings. It could be Mother Earth, Mother Earth is a scripture. Nature is a scripture. I think all the spiritual teachings we need are in nature being reflected back to us. So it's saying that I take refuge in that, in the teacher. I take refuge in the Dharma, in the teachings that are guiding my way, that remind me, that show me, that I'm not doing anything wrong. The teachings that are showing me, how to be in love with myself or with this world. And then in the community, the Sangha, which is us, it's all of us together who are just having this honest conversation. I mean, I know I'm the one doing the talking, but it is a conversation between our hearts. And taking refuge in that. I think that is such good medicine, whatever that means to you. Ajahn Chah, who was a beautiful Thai forest monk, an important teacher of Jack Cornfield's, he says the true refuge is the heart, nothing else, which that is such a beautiful prayer, that our heart is our refuge, that when we start getting into that place, that mind place, right? I failed, I'm not good enough, I'm doing it wrong. Oh, all these things are coming up. It's the me show, all of that. Fine. It's like that is the mind. It's just doing what it's programmed to do. But then there's the place, that place where awareness lives, that place of our heart, that is just a space like that open net that just allows everything to pass through, no judgment. That place is always there for us, and we can take refuge in that. We can go back to that. And in doing that, those mind kind of waves, they start to settle. On that retreat that I told you about at the beginning, it was like a lake being churned and everything was just coming up. And of course, that's happened many times since. But now I've found that when that happens, which of course it still does, I just kind of let it churn up. And then I know that if I could just be with it, it will just quiet down, and then there'll be more space and more clarity than there was before. So it's not about making it go away. But anyway, I'm going to sing this chant. And I'm going to sing Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Sama Sambuddhasa as well, which is the chant that is done at Plum Village very regularly, a chant to the Buddha, to the Exalted One. And I just think it's nice to pair them together. And let this chant be an opportunity for you to just actually let go of everything I said and just see if you can find a place of refuge in yourself, no matter what those thoughts are that are going on, no matter what stories or trips you may be investing in, because we're always investing in that. Just let them be there and know that there's something else going on at the same time. The clouds are moving, but there is always a sky. And sometimes doing spiritual practice is like on an airplane when you take off, like there's that turbulence, and that we have to go through that turbulence, but then hopefully, usually we get a smoother air, right? We have to just kind of trust, okay, we'll just make it through that. So I think it's the same with our inner realm. Okay, I'm gonna stop talking for a little bit. Buddham Sharanam Gacchami. I take refuge in the Buddha or the teacher. Dharmam Sharanam Gacchami. I take refuge in the teachings. Sangam Sharanam Gacchami. I take refuge in the community, in this gathering of hearts. Buddham Sharanam Gacchami. Dharmam Sharanam Gacchami. Sangam Sharanam Gacchami. Buddham Sharanam Gacchami. Dharmam Sharanam Gacchami. Sangam Sharanam Gacchami. Buddham Sharanam Gacchami. Dharmam Sharanam Gacchami. Sangam Sharanam Gacchami. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Try to drop down just deeper than thought, as deeper, deeper than thought. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Samma sambuddhassa. Samma sambuddhassa. Now we're just going to imagine that we're calling all of our energy back, right? Usually our energy and our attention are scattered everywhere. We need to call all of those things home. So just imagine that all the pieces of yourself that have been scattered around, that have wandered, they're all just coming back, and you find yourself right here in this moment, and your body and mind in the same place. Nothing wrong with you now in this moment, nothing that needs to change. Time, and Thich Nhat Hanh says that we need to return to the island of ourself. This island of self is a peaceful refuge. It's our true home. Whenever the winds of the world blow us off course and blow us away, whenever the winds of our mind blow us away, we can come back to this moment and just be here, pay attention, see ourselves. So if you like, you can just become aware of your breathing, because our breathing is an anchor into the present moment. You don't have to do anything to change your breathing, but just notice that you're being breathed. Our breath tells us a lot about our mind. When we're very angry or frustrated, our breathing is very short and very tight. And when we're relaxed, when we're at ease, our breathing is more spacious and more lengthened. So just become aware of the quality of that, whatever it is. And then your exhale, whenever you exhale, you can just imagine that you're releasing anything that you no longer wish to hold or carry in this moment. Just let that go. And I'll sing for you the Plum Village song that I sang last time about the island of ourself, this beautiful refuge, this beautiful island that is always waiting for us to return. This is a Plum Village song in the Thich Nhat Hanh lineage. Breathing in, I go back to the island within myself. There are beautiful trees within the island. There are clear streams of water. There are birds, sunshine, and fresh air. Breathing out, I feel safe. I enjoy going back to my island. Breathing in, I go back to the island within myself. There are beautiful trees within the island. There are clear streams of water. There are birds, sunshine, and fresh air. Breathing out, I feel safe. I enjoy going back to my island. When we hear the bell, it's a reminder to come back to our true home. Lagata, the prayer is this wonderful sound that brings me back to my true home. I like that prayer, that one too, Ellen. I have arrived. I have arrived. I am home in the here and in the now. I have arrived. I am home in the here and in the now. I am solid. I am free. I am solid. I am free. In the ultimate I dwell. In the ultimate I dwell. So I read something very short that I thought was very poignant. I'll share it with you. It's from Anthony de Mello, who was a Jesuit priest. He says, it's a question between two people. What is love? The total absence of fear, said the master. What is it we fear? Love, said the master. That's just genius. I'm not sure if you got it. I'm going to read it again. What is love? What is love? That's a question. The master said, love is the total absence of fear. What is it we fear? Love, said the master. I love that. I love that because love is the absence of fear, but so often what we fear is love. I don't know if you've ever had that experience, but I definitely have. It's for all of the times and all of the, how much we want love, running after love, when love actually, oh, Anisha, when love actually arrives, sometimes, it's like, what are you doing here? But we're running after it, and then love knocks on our door and we open it. And it's like, oh, yeah, you have the wrong address. We just slam the door in love's face, so to speak, So that's a very interesting thing. Actually, I'm so curious. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. I just think it's, why do we fear love? Why is it that we fear that which we want so much? I have my thoughts about it. I'm curious what you think. Anything that comes up for you, what are your thoughts about, why? Why are we fearing that which we most desire? Yeah. Right, definitely past experiences with maybe what we thought was love or something, vulnerability, worthiness, love and fear. We fear total. It's going fast. Fear of being exposed. Oh yeah, it can hurt me. Rejection, surrendering to vulnerability, the deepest possible experience and truth of who we are. Yeah, fear of rejection and afraid of letting go. Biological training to be afraid to help us survive, right? Oh, there's so much. Every one of these I want to acknowledge. There's so much, right? The dysfunctional stuff that was called love, that is not real love. Thinking that it can't be that simple, like I would lose myself. Yeah. Yeah. Which we do in a way, which we do. Love. I read something from Osho recently. It was about self-love. I think you all know that I've been working on this course for the last 100 lifetimes about self-love that I'm still working on because I'm learning it. I'm learning, it's taking a while. But anyway, Osho was saying something about how, in real self-love, there is no self. There's only love. It's a really profound contemplation. In love, there is no self really. If you've ever had that experience of being in love, it's like an absorption in another person or an absorption in something, and we actually kind of forget ourselves. And we fear that. We fear that forgetting of ourselves, but yet we welcome it every night when we go to sleep, which is interesting, right? When we go to sleep, we're gone, we're out. I think I mentioned a couple sessions before, but just the idea of deep dreamless sleep. There is no dreaming happening. There is no dreamer, right? There's only deep dreamless sleep, but yet something is a thread that remains. So when we wake up in the morning, we think, oh, I had such a good sleep. But who had that sleep and what was that experience? That is like a kind of deep, restful absorption that we long for in a way. All I want to get is a good night's sleep, right? But that is, in a sense, we're kind of losing ourselves in that. But yet when it comes to something like love, there is that fear, like it's going to swallow me up. It's going to just take me away, which I can very much relate to. And it's interesting because until I started singing, for me, singing and chanting and music just in general, or it could be dance or it could be whatever for you, there is an absorption that happens. And I often feel like if I'm really kind of dropped in and I'm kind of gone beyond my sort of surface thoughts of my mind, then there's no singer. There's only sound. There's no person making music. There's just music. And that experience of just kind of being one with the music is so liberating and so healing. And that's where, that's almost like you could call it like a flow state, but I think it's a little deeper than that. But that is so desirable. And yet it's also can be so frightening because there's this survival instinct. I think, Heidi, you said that just, this feeling like biologically, like we need to keep ourselves intact, right? Like I am this person, I am this ego, I am this identity. Carrie Grossman, she's a teacher on Insight Timer, and she's doing these live sessions. I need to like hold this thing together and solidify my identity and all of that. There's a fear, like what if that unravels? Like what if love just shows everything, right? What if it just reveals all of those vulnerabilities and those insecurities? Then what will happen? I have to protect, right? And I think in life in general, we're kind of riding this tension between wanting to expand and wanting to just be open, and then wanting and also needing to kind of protect and to have boundaries, right? And so where is that place in the middle? Both are needed, right? We can't just live with we have to have some sense of self. We have to have some sense of boundaries, to be able to say yes, no, this is who I am, and not just allow ourselves to get thrown around, right, by things in life. We have to learn how to develop that, which can be a challenge sometimes. And at the same time, there's this longing and a desire to go beyond that self-protective mechanism, to really expand, to really just feel without limits, to feel unrestricted. And I don't have any answers to any of this. I just find it a really interesting tension and a really interesting thing. I actually remember Father Thomas Keating, when I sat with him once, he was saying something about, someone was saying, I just want to get rid of my ego. I'm tired of this thing. It's really a burden. It just, I hate my ego, and just please make it go away. That's basically what he was saying. And I was like, yes, let's make it go away, because I can't stand mine either. That I really felt this like aggression towards myself. And he just said, how can you give up something before you've actually admitted and accepted that you have it? He said it much more eloquently than I just did, but it was such a profound statement. He was basically saying, if you're trying to just destroy and get rid of your ego before you've actually acknowledged it, and you're trying to beat it to a pulp before you witness it, see it, let it have its existence, then you can't offer something that you don't have. How can you offer something that you don't, I can't offer just air, right? So this self, there needs to be a sense of this self that then can be given up, right? So we can't just say that your sense of self and personality and ego is all horrible and bad, or you could say it's an illusion, it's this. You could say a million different things, but this vehicle is actually what is helping us to go beyond. If you could, use that, the idea of like a thorn removing another thorn. It's a metaphor that Amma says sometimes, right? It's like we need that thorn to help uproot the thorn of this misperception about who we are. We're so like holding on so tightly to it. But actually, it's also the gateway to going beyond. So hating any part of ourselves, whatever it may be, at least in my experience, doesn't work that well. Hating ourselves into, how can you hate your way into enlightenment? How can you hate your way into love? Just like beating yourself up into a pulp, having like aggression towards yourself, making, telling yourself everything you do is bad or is wrong, or your ego is this horrible monster that needs to be, destroyed. How is that helping us to go beyond those like defensive structures? There's not a lot of safety in that. So we have to create those conditions that allow, this so-called ego, this thing we're calling the ego, to sort of melt, right? In love. I mean, that's what bhakti yoga is. It's the path of love and devotion. It's through that love and through that absorption that it just begins to shift. And there's an opening that happens. There's more of that space that happens. And for me, I feel like music really, really helps with that, because music is it's so enticing to the mind that the mind is just drawn towards it, and it just gets absorbed into it. And all of that mental craziness just starts to quiet down, and there's a connection to something deeper in our being that is always there, that nothing can ever take that away from us. That's really who we are. So anyway, I just think it's a fascinating question and conversation, and just, the idea that love is the absence of fear, and it's really what we all desire the most at the end of our life. And at any point in our life, what matters more than love? But yet at the same time, there is such a deep fear of that love. I have a friend who a few months ago entered a new relationship and was really feeling like just deeply in love with this person. And the main emotion that she was feeling other than this deep love was this terror, you know, because the love is like overpowering, and it was just this feeling like I'm losing myself. I'm like, I'm free falling, like I'm groundless. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know who I am anymore. I don't know what's going on. And right, so there's that sense of that love, like that free falling, like there's no structures anymore. I can sometimes feel that way. But I think that is also similar to what I was saying at the beginning around the light. You know, when we shine the light of our awareness inside ourselves, often it illuminates all of those things. It illuminates the places that where we don't feel light, or when we feel love, it brings that up, right? I mean, in any intimate relationship or any close relationship, you know, it becomes a mirror, and all the places that feel unloved, or all of our fears, or all of our, you know, issues with trust or low self-worth, or all of these things, they come up, you know, in the safety of love's presence, you know, real love. So that it may look messy, right? These things may look messy on the surface, but actually that's what they're designed to do. Light and love, like I was saying, these great revealers, they're revealing so that we can like feel these things and heal these things and come back into a place of wholeness. I don't think by, you know, beating ourselves down or trying to destroy any part of ourselves, but by acknowledging, by looking with love and letting that awareness itself do the work of transformation, you know, that non-doing that I was speaking about. I think, you know. Hi, Kelly. I just was reading your comment. I'm not sure if that was for me, but thank you. Love exposes our vulnerability. We desperately want it, but we fear losing it. Yeah. There is a terror that the object of your devotion could disappoint you. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And it will. If our object of devotion is something on the outside in a world of impermanence, chances are it will. I remember Amma said once that spirituality is the destruction of expectations, which really bummed me out. But it's true. You know, it didn't, I mean, I'm being silly about it, but I mean, it was like, oh man, yeah, you know, it is a destruction of expectations. I expect it's going to look this way. I expect I'm going to be this way. I expect the world is going to be this way. And when really doing that, you know, sitting and looking at reality, so-called reality, most of us are not seeing reality. We're just seeing our filtered view of it. But it is that destruction of expectations, or there is that disappointment. But that disappointment, that disappointment is the doorway, I think, that brings us back to that true love. You know, true love heals, like I keep saying on the altar. It's like that disappointment, it brings us back to where the true abode of love is, which is always inside of us. And we get confused when we thinking that this thing on the outside is going to give it to us. And yes, that things on the outside can reflect that back to us, but the source of the love is not out there. You know, I always think the source of love is going to be like in a cookie or something. I keep looking for it. I keep thinking I'm going to find that love I'm looking for in a cookie or something else, but I never do. I just do temporarily, you know, because ultimately, anytime we try to derive our satisfaction from something in the world, we forget and we don't realize that that satisfaction ultimately is coming from within us. Another great metaphor that I love from Amma is she talks about it when a dog chews on a bone. You know, when a dog eats a bone, its gums bleed. And so it sees blood and it thinks the blood is coming from the bone, but it's not. It's coming from its own gums. It's a very interesting metaphor. You know, we think our happiness is coming from something in the world or something outside, and we don't realize that the source of it is within us. And that's what all of the mystics have been trying to tell us. Like, actually, the source is within you. You think that yumminess is, you know, in the object, but it's actually in the mind of the enjoyer. It's in the mind of the one that is experiencing it, if that makes sense. So how do we actually, you know, realize these things in an embodied way, instead of having it just be like a mind trip, you know, a mental thing? You know, that to me is a question that I always have. Like, okay, I get it. on some level intellectually maybe, but I'm not able to live it all the time. I'm only able to live it really ever rarely, and to actually feel it as an embodied experience. That's that gap I was talking about before. How do I actually learn to live this experience and not just talk about it? And I think that comes from quieting, connecting to that silence, that inner quiet, and realizing that it actually already is happening. It's only our mind that says it's not, to try to drop down to a place that is, like I said before, deeper than thought. Yeah, I struggle with that gap for sure. Forget, remember, repeat. Yeah, exactly. And that's why they call it a practice. But it's like what Father Thomas Keating was saying in the book, which I just love that part about the eagle, right? When you see an eagle circling in the sky, it's going like that. So we may feel like, oh, I'm just going like this, but he's saying you're not. With any step we make towards our own heart, any step we make towards our own deepening of awareness, it is like that eagle. We may come back around to the same place, on the horizon, but we're in a higher place. We're in a different place, looking in a different way. That's so beautiful. I'm going to sing a mantra, a chant. I don't want to just keep talking so much, and we're getting towards the end. Can you get the recorded song earlier? Oh, I haven't recorded that, but I will at some point. I have a scroll long list of songs I'd like to record, but I will. I'd like to sing I'm going to sing Madhuram, which I've sung before, and I just really love the song. And it's that you can find the original version on the app by Ito and Joe, and it's a song to the Divine Mother. I just think it's a really beautiful one, and it calls in those qualities of the Divine Feminine, which ultimately, at the end of the day, I feel like it's that love, that compassion, that acceptance, that Thai also embodies, that gentleness that helps our heart to soften, that helps those blocks in our heart to melt, that we can actually feel safe to be loved. We can feel safe to love and to let love in. I think that that's an important part of it. So to call on that, I think that's a good way to close out. Devi Namah Maturam Devi Rupa Maduram Devi Namah Maturam Devi Rupa Maduram 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 Sarvam Devi Maduram Devi Smaranam Maduram Devi Charanam Maduram Devi Smaranam Maduram Devi Charanam Maduram 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 Devi Maturam Devi Puja Maturam Devi Stotra Maturam Devi Puja Maturam Devi Stotra Maturam 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 Sarvam Devi Maturam Shanti Narayani Om Devi Maturam Devi Maturam Let us end with a prayer from John O'Donohue. For belonging. May you listen to your longing to be free. May the frames of your belonging be generous enough for your dreams. May you arise each day with a voice of blessing whispering in your heart. May you find a harmony between your soul and your life. May the sanctuary of your soul never become haunted. May you know the eternal longing that lives at the heart of time. May there be kindness in your gaze when you look within. May you never place walls between the light and yourself. May you allow the wild beauty of the invisible world to gather you, mind you, and embrace you in belonging. May there be kindness in your gaze when you look within. May there be kindness in your gaze when you look within. Whatever may arise, whatever churning may happen, may you and may all of us meet that churning with love and understanding. Accept the messy, beautiful journey of this human life. That we may know we're capable of so many things. That love is infinite and love is the true healer, as Tai said. And with each day, may we be able to embrace the forces of love and light that live within us, not to turn away from our heart, but to turn towards it, to embrace it, and become more and more aware of our inherent wholeness. Will end. Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. May all beings everywhere be peaceful and happy. And dedicate the merit from our time together, that it may be of service not just to our own hearts, but to all beings. Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. I'll chant it 9 times. Om Lokaha samastaha sukhino bhavantu. 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 Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Om Shri Guru Pyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Peace, peace, peace. Thank you. Thank you so much. I just wanted to say one last thing, which is that, I think it's such a huge conversation about love and why we fear love. It's, we could have this conversation forever. Every live session could be about it, and we would just barely touch the surface on it. But I think so much of it is that, we're so invested in these certain stories about ourselves that I'm unworthy or I'm undeserving or I have to be a certain way or look a certain way in order to be loved, because we've been taught from the time that we're pretty young that love itself is conditional, right? Or it looks a certain way, or certain people look like they do certain things that give them love, right? And so we have that conditional understanding of love. It's hard to understand the idea of unconditional love that goes beyond anything that we might attribute it to, like I'm worthy of this, I'm a good girl, I'm a bad girl, I do this, I do that. And so I think it's a really good thing to notice or just deepen that awareness around like those stories that come up, if love presents itself to you in your life in some form, in whatever way, if there's a closing down or a turning away from it, to just look, what are the beliefs that I have about love that are making me push that away? Why am I running away? Obviously it could be all of these different things that everybody talked about, but is there a fundamental feeling that like somehow I'm undeserving of that or not good enough for that? I find, at least for myself, that seed tends to often be the underneath everything else. And so yeah, that's something that I'm learning about and working with in my life all the time. And tomorrow is Valentine's Day. For those of you who celebrate, I just wanted to see if I have it here to share something. This is just well, no, I couldn't. I have two things I wanted to share, but I'm going to choose one. Okay. Back to John O'Donohue. I was going to read something to you about hugging meditation. I think it's so sweet from Thich Nhat Hanh, from Thai, that he talks about hugging meditation. Because I feel like ultimately, the biggest gift we can give anyone we love is our presence. So he does a teaching about how to hug with presence. But actually, I'm going to read you this little brief thing just to give thanks again to John O'Donohue. I think this is a good way to complete what we talked about today. The beauty of the true ideal is its hospitality towards woundedness, weakness, failure, and fallback. Yet so many people are infected with the virus of perfection. They cannot rest. They allow themselves no ease until they come close to the cleansed domain of perfection. This false notion of perfection does damage and puts their lives under great strain. It is a wonderful day in a life when one is finally able to stand before the long, deep mirror of one's own reflection and view oneself with appreciation, acceptance, and forgiveness. On that day, one breaks through the falsity of images and expectations which have blinded one's spirit. One can only learn to see who one is when one learns to view oneself with the most intimate and forgiving compassion. The end. I think that sums it all up. Thank you so much. I hope that you receive something from this weird buffet of conversation. And I just thank you so much for being here, for all that you shared, and for these insights that I think will this theme is very deep and rich. And I certainly am going to keep sitting with it, contemplating it, and hopefully we can continue the conversation. The poem I read before a few minutes ago, that was probably that John O'Donohue one. It was called For Belonging. If you come to my circle, which is called Friends of Carrie Grossman, I usually try to post in the circle somewhere the different readings that I share. So you're welcome to come. You can find them there. And see, I guess that's about it. I have I think many of you know I'm doing a workshop on March 6th. It's not a live session, but it's a workshop, and it's on the subtle body, which is just a huge subject that is fascinating to me. I've always been really interested in healing and studied a lot of different types of healing, especially energy healing. I just think it's really, really interesting how, we are these multidimensional beings, and now science is kind of coming to confirm what many ancient people always have known, that we're more than just this physical body. And so we're going to explore that in the workshop and look at some of the emerging research on what's called a biofield. The biofield is just a fancy name that the National Institute of Health gave to this energy field, right, that we are, known by many different names. That's the sort of Western medical name for that. And then we're going to look at some of the different ways that different cultures and traditions have talked about subtle energy, the subtle body, and what that means for us, and what we can how we can incorporate that into our life. It's just something huge and fascinating. And I'm trying to create this PowerPoint. And there's been a lot of swearing happening in my house this week as I've tried to learn how to do it because I'm not familiar with that program, and hopefully it will come together. I think it will. I think there's about 34 slots left, and you can find it on my profile. So lots of love. Thank you so much for everything. I really appreciate all of you. And I truly enjoy swearing too. It's been, I've had to exercise incredible restraint doing sessions, not using them. When used at the right moment, they can really accentuate a point. But I don't want to disrespect anybody here. So if you come to one of my live programs, though, you might hear some. Anyway, lots of love. Thank you so much. And I'll see you soon. I will schedule something maybe in 2 weeks.